Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks, where we meet with the top thought leaders and strategists in emerging technologies, digital assets, the regulatory landscape, and capital markets. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, and joining me on the desk at the Nasdaq market site to wrap our in-studio coverage for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which spotlighted the evolving landscape of digital threats and the strategic responses shaping financial services. We have Yonesy Nunez, Global Cybersecurity Executive, Colonel Georgeo Xavier Pulikkathara, CIO and CISO of iMerit, as well as Dr. Aleksandr Yampolskiy, co-founder and CEO of SecurityScorecard. We're here to discuss how the role of the Chief Information Security Officer, known as the CISO, has evolved from a technical risk manager to a business enabler. It's great to have all of you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks. Yonesy, let's kick it off with you. When we think about the role of the CISO, it's no longer just to manage technical risk. It really is to enable the business to grow and be competitive.
Jill, thanks for having me and the rest of the team here today. I would say over the years, the CISO, or security senior leader at organizations, the role has evolved more about being a security enabler and a collaborator. The CISO, as it evolves, has to be a communicator and really understand how the organizations make their money, how their culture operates, and what are the strengths or weaknesses that they have, and be able to tell that story effectively so that we can help prioritize the work we need to do. Oftentimes we're challenged by not having enough resources, by not having the right people in place, but it's good to understand at a high level where we're going as an organization, where the market is going. And I would say over the last year, the two most popular letters in the alphabet are AI. And I think that as the cybersecurity executive, our role is to make sure that we're leaning in, understanding our environment, and be able to then move forward with prioritization, conviction, and building a strong culture of cybersecurity awareness.
And George, a lot of it comes down to is it's a delicate balance between innovation and trust within the org.
It is, and we have to be able to enable innovation. So at AI, we do what's necessary for the client. That's the difference between checking a box and building trust. So you have to move forward, right? So let the company innovate, same time put in place the controls, but they got to move forward innovation, making money. And that's the challenge for the CISO today and going forward.
Yeah, and it can't be overstated just how important this role is, and to be able to communicate that, because one outage can cascade not only through your enterprise, but across clients, partners, vendors.
The role of a CISO became so much more complex. You have to be a translator between the technical teams and the board of directors, but also we're no longer protecting just our own companies. We're all interconnected to each other. Your data is in the cloud. 65% of our data breaches today happen due to negligence of third parties. So the CISO needs to enable innovation with AI while keeping the company secure, act as a translator between the board and the technical team, make sure you don't do it on increased budgets because everybody's keeping their budgets in check, and on top of it, worry not just about their own company, but also about the supply chain ecosystem and making sure that your third and fourth parties are secure. So it's a complicated job.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I would also argue that it has to be a cybersecurity culture within the org, from the top down, because security by design, I think, is going to be a competitive advantage moving forward.
Absolutely, and when people ask me for advice, when boards of directors ask me for advice, how do you keep a company secure? The one simple advice I give is make sure your CISO gets to present at your audit and risk committee, because if a CEO sees that the CISO is at the board meeting, the CEO is going to provide the budget, you're going to provide enablement. It all starts with a culture. Culture beats strategy for breakfast, as Peter Drucker used to say, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So it starts at the top. If the board and the CEO are talking about cyber, and if they're technologically literate, the change happens. The board members, if in the middle of a board meeting you raise a hand and say, what's EBITDA? People are going to give you a strange look. You're supposed to know what EBITDA is. But if you're a board member and in the middle of a board meeting you raise a hand and say, I'm not sure what denial of service attack is, it's still totally normal. So it's also the onus on the board and the CEO to make sure that we don't just speak the language of numbers, but we become AI and cybersecurity literate in our conversations.
And I think that's one of the key things you mentioned, Jill, earlier today, which is around, as the role continues to evolve, it's not just about technology anymore. Cybersecurity cuts across multiple components of an organization. It's reputational, it's financial, it's HR, it's all risk. And what I'm seeing as being one of many directors right now that are on public boards and private boards, being from a CISO background, what I'm finding out is that we need to not only have a seat at the table, but we need to be part of the planning, the communication, and the go-to-market strategies as well.
Yeah, and part of that is too, George, you have to be able to collaborate across those functions, to Yonesy's point, because I think companies almost get in their ways because they operate in silos.
That's right. And I don't operate in silos. So one of the things we do, and one of the things we do at iMerit is I actually meet with everybody in the executive leadership team. I make sure we have good relationships. When a security incident happens, it's not going to be just security. It's going to be IT, legal, finance, engineering, all working together to figure out how to go do containment, right? We need to practice what we preach, not just the executive leadership level, but all the way down. So I talk to the people on my team, talk to the folks across you and make sure they know what's happening, right? If you see concerns, talk to them about it. But we have to work together on this. So it's very, very important we reach out of our silos. If somebody wants to work on a new technology, new innovation, don't hold them back. Figure out, how do we protect that? How do we protect their flank as they move forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, it always comes back to where people are the front line, and that's where the vulnerabilities are going to exist, which was my point before, where it has to be a cyber first, privacy first mentality as the culture of the company.
Absolutely, and so it starts with people and training people and making sure that people know what to fall for and what not to fall for. However, it's becoming more and more complicated right now with the proliferation of deepfakes.
Yes.
Somebody can take a video of Yonesy or myself or yourself, and it looks just like us, sounds just like us, places a phone call and says, hey, can you please initiate the wire transfer? So we need to evolve our techniques, we need to train people, but we also need to train them in different ways. Just like we teach our children, if you walk in on a dark street, maybe look around or don't walk home from school alone if it's after hours. We need to start embedding this education into everyday lives at school and also in companies as well.
I agree, and I think that the role of awareness and training, it's not just per discipline. It should be holistic across the board. I think one of the things that I like to see more is, as you do awareness and training and education, is that you're looking at it across the organization rather than a compliance assessment or awareness training, a cyber awareness training. And we have a leaning moment today where we're seeing, as you mentioned, advanced attacks on integrity, where I'm dubbing it the agentic security process enablement, where we need to lean in to make sure that we are enabling these processes that we do today, whether they're manual or human. We're leveraging AI to help us deal with deepfakes, helping us deal with the advanced attacks that are coming through our organizations today. Alex, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, George, you can see, and it's not too uncommon. It's happening these days where somebody that's a high-level position at a company making a statement, it's a deep fake, it can move markets, it could create geopolitical incidents and so forth. So I think when incident response plans, crisis management, it's not a set it and forget it exercise.
No.
It is something that continuously needs to, just like you're adapting to AI, you have to adapt your response and proactive mitigation.
Not just in a security, so we definitely have a security incident response plan, we definitely practice it. But we also need to be looking at the frontier, how our scholars program works. We look for fraud. We proactively make sure they're on screening, trying to block out anything from the nation states trying to conduct warfare, making sure people are who they say they are coming in, to make sure our clients are protected, right? So at iMerit, we take security very seriously. But more importantly, making sure we understand the changing nature of what the technology looks like. So I myself, I'm doing a doctorate in cybersecurity, data science, as well as agentic AI. I'm trying to encourage my own team members to look at what I call the golden triangle: practical experience, certifications, and ongoing education, right? With AI fluency in the middle of all that, right? We need to move forward like that. I set the example, they follow, we will talk together and figure out, hey, what don't we know?
Yeah, well, part of the challenge is too that AI has erased this gap between the good actors and the bad actors, and it really does come down to who is faster, who's more successful, who's well-funded, and sometimes that can skew to the bad actor side because they don't necessarily have all the layers of compliance and approvals, just like a nation state wouldn't have.
That's exactly it. For example, the tools like HackStrike AI, LLM, for the hackers, where you can just type, can you give me an exploit against Citrix devices? And all of a sudden, you don't need to run sophisticated scripts. It just gives you an exploit. So the bar for being able to be a sophisticated hacker just dropped. Also, as companies adopt AI, people are rushing to adopt AI. It's a boardroom mandate. But securing it is an afterthought. There's a proliferation of a use of shadow AI, just like we had shadow IT. We have a proliferation of shadow AI, where an employee might be sitting in a bank, upload financial ledger, sensitive documents, just to get help. Maybe to ChatGPT, or worse off, to DeepSeek in China. and all of a sudden your sensitive data is leaked.
That's right.
It's not protected. And I just think that we don't design AI right now with security in mind. Just like when internet appeared, it wasn't designed with cybersecurity in mind. We just rushed to adopt it.
I agree. Last time I reviewed the numbers on this, I think it was July, the big AI players spent something like $300 billion advancing their AI capabilities. And my question was automatically, how much of that was invested in cybersecurity? The number was minuscule, probably about 50 basis points. So our lean-in moment today truly is about making sure that as we enable the business with agentic AI, et cetera, that we are bringing security in from the inception at this inflection point, at this lean-in moment, so that we don't wait until the train, unfortunately, has already left the station. We need to catch up and make sure we're thinking securely by design as we do this. Otherwise, we're going to be, I feel that we are exactly where we were 15, 20 years ago with a data loss prevention and email protection. We're right back to where we started. Now, the avenue is no longer email. The avenue is not the browser through CASB. The avenue now are these AI companies.
Right. But I mean, there is no choice but to think cyber first and develop and model that way. Think about the rush, again, we were talking about this off camera, but the dividing line, November 2022, when generative AI became part of everyone's vernacular, right? And there was such a rush, whether internal, external, to get product out there.
Right.
Perhaps we didn't think about the risk, or maybe we didn't even know the unknowns, right? And those gaps and vulnerabilities are starting to be exposed, and as hopefully organizations learn from that. You have to model out cyber first.
You have to model out cyber first, but more importantly, you got to figure out your employees, like to your point, how do we protect the AI? How do we protect our data, right? What data is going to go into AI? Acceptable use of AI, making sure, to your point about shadow AI, making sure our tools to go detect that. So there are tools out there that attackers are currently using today, like IP royal proxy and such, that we can quickly detect and saying that person's not coming where they are, right? So you can use tools to go detect that. At the same time, education. It doesn't change, right? So you want to make sure you got a good education program for your organizations, but this technology is going to evolve and evolve and evolve, right? It's not once and done. So as you do that, we got to make sure we understand what's happening. Shadow AI is a real thing. If you don't partner with your divisions and with the people in your company, they're going to go find their own solution, bring it in, and get their own shadow AI up and running, and now you're suddenly finding your data is in the cloud.
Yeah.
Somebody else's LLM.
But Alex, it also comes back to, even with all these new tools being introduced, not every single person within the organization needs to have these tools. If they haven't used it before or it doesn't relate to their function, is it necessarily prudent to give them access if it's something that doesn't even make sense for their role?
Well, you have to, I think it's just like Yonesy spoke, I think the old concepts become new again. We had the least privilege principle in cybersecurity for many years, which basically means you get access to the technology and the tools only on a per need basis. So you're absolutely right. However, I do think as I look into the future, every company is going to be an AI company. Just like we don't go to each other and say, oh, I use email, that's my competitive advantage. Everybody uses email in the company. Similarly, I think 10 years into the future, or maybe even less, every company is going to be an AI company. So that's why so many people are rushing to adopt it. And that's why a lot of the guardrails come as an afterthought.
Yeah. I think that right now, because we've seen also over the last few months a lot of acquisitions in the AI protection space. Obviously, we don't have all the tools that we require today based on the capabilities. So the human becomes the control.
That's
so
right.
I have a bit of a contrarian view here, is that you need to provide the training for the tools that you're going to help enable your people. I don't think you just allow access without proper training. So I think you need to do both here, because we are now leveraging humans as our #1 control until the technology and the security tools are in place to help us cover our bases. They're not there yet today, but as we do that, I feel that education, training, access, and the limited controls we have in place today can help us get there faster, Joe.
Yeah, but again, it has to be communicated. How do you quantify, right, what your cyber risk is financially? How do you express, this is the value that we are bringing to the org? Whether, it's very abstract to say, if we spend this amount of money, we won't lose X, Y, Z, should we have a breach as it relates to reputation. It's very intangible. So how do you put up, in boards, and the C-suite wants to see this, what are those metrics? How do you quantify success as a CISO?
Dollar cost, cyber quantification of the risk, assigning a dollar amount if this system goes down, if we lose this data, what is the litigation cost, what is the downtime? You mentioned AWS here earlier, but my point is that you have to talk to the board in terms of numbers of this system's not available, what does the cost look like? And you have to be able to balance our budget with that, right? At the same time, you brought up a good point about human feedback and reinforced learning. iMerit does a lot of work to make sure we train the AI with reinforcement learning from human feedback. What that means is that we have people looking at the AI and looking at the decisions that AI makes to make sure it's correct, right? Validating that AI model, validating the data that's coming through, validating the outputs of it. It's one of the things we excel at. Our Scholars program does quite a bit of work around that. And you got to be able to show that. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to put this model in place, put data into it, next thing you know, you have a disaster. You got to make sure all those controls are in place. There's actually a guardrail to make sure that the AI and the model is working as it should be. Yeah. But to the board, you got to be able to show what the dollar cost quantification is for if a incident happens or if data gets breached, what that looks like, right? So you got to be able to figure out data versus, I mean, got a breach versus controls, right? So it's a balancing act.
Yeah. Alex, the same question with you as well. And you know I've discussed this in prior conversations, but being able to quantify that technical performance and what that equates to for the value of the business. How do you benchmark that? Okay, so we spent XYZ in cybersecurity this year. While we didn't have a breach, and we know we've saved that arbitrary number, how do you justify those costs going forward if you didn't have a breach? Like, how do you make those business cases?
Yeah, so, well, that's actually our business. We're in the business of providing trusted, objective KPIs for companies to measure and quantify risk, and we're used by 70% of the Fortune 100. You have to have data based on evidence. You have to publish your algorithm. The algorithm needs to be transparent. You need to expose accuracy rates. What are the corner cases? So, like, I'm a strong believer that you need KPIs. Just like if you drive a car, you need to have a speedometer knowing how fast you drive.
Yes.
But whenever you start having one KPI, you can get blindsided. You can start gaming the KPI. So KPI is a data point, and I think it's imperative for a board member to report objective, trusted KPIs of how you're doing and how your peers are doing, and showing, just like George spoke, the downside. If an event happens, here's how much money you can lose. But having said that, you also need to articulate a strategy. Here's my strategy. Here's where we're going. Here's what I know. Here's what I don't know. A single KPI, very valuable, but it's not going to always show the full picture. It's all about the context.
And Yonesy, we talk about having the appropriate skill sets for AI and upskilling and reskilling and so forth. What about for the cyber function? Is the talent available to execute on this? I believe, what is there, 500,000 jobs need to be filled in cyber roles?
So I think that, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to keep talking about this. It is our moment to lean in. I know that a lot of cyber professionals, they become like fanatics. I love the Mets, so they become fans of tools of they become fans of tools of solutions. I think we have to fall in love with the problem again, and then leverage the latest techniques, the latest tools that we have in place. And today, the lean in is truly with AI-enabled. Agentic security process enablement is what we need to lean into, because it's not going to be enough to leverage our same techniques and tools that we had in the past with the attackers and what they're using today. We have to lean in. So that's my thesis from now moving forward.
I would also say that it doesn't necessarily have to be like a hardware, software role that you go into. I mean, cyber, whether it's legal, whether it's policy, any risk management, you could be a reporter on cybersecurity and raising awareness. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a plug and play role either, which I think opens up more opportunities.
It's a multi-dimensional role. Cyber risk today in cybersecurity is what operational risk management was 15 years ago. It cuts across everything in the organization. So the capabilities, I would say, for managing a cyber career and a function that's effective within organizations cuts across all components of a modern organization.
Yeah. I was going to add to that. So to me, this is not just my passion. It's also what I enjoy doing, but also it's my profession. Not just, to me, it's like being a doctor or a lawyer. I think we need at least 5 years of experience working in IT, the OSI model, infrastructure, understanding networks, protocols, how data flows across your network, in and out, north, south, east, west, and then understanding that part, because that's what we're really protecting, right, that data. And then we need at the same time start learning about cybersecurity. I think a lot of people want to rush into cybersecurity saying, hey, I want to learn cybersecurity in a couple of weeks or couple of months. I love the ambition, but I think they need to get with the fundamentals down. At the same time, as a company, we need to get the fundamentals down, how we're going to protect that data, right? Patching, vulnerability management, who's touching your data, access controls, principle of least privilege. These things need to be practiced, and preach to the entire organization so they know why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and making sure that we can lead by example.
All right, appreciate everyone's insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks, and thanks for joining me from MarketSite. I'm Joe Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.